A very good morning. It's just past 8 this Friday morning and we're back again with Breakfast News. I'm Rukma. Well, as the government intensifies efforts to battle the surge in COVID cases, we bring to you more details of the measures being taken. Also updates on the COVID situation from all corners of the country, election news from poll-bound West Bengal, the climate summit, vaccine updates, news from across the world, sports and weather too. But first, here are the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi set to hold a series of meetings today on measures to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. PM will interact with CMs of high-burden states, will also hold meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers of India via video conferencing. Corporate Affairs Ministry appeals to leaders of corporate India to come forward and supplement government efforts in view of COVID surge. Ministry allows spending of corporate social responsibility funds for setting up makeshift hospitals and COVID care facilities. Big relief for people being treated for COVID in hospitals. Finance Ministry issues clarification saying that it is necessary to provide cashless insurance facility to all hospitals for treatment of COVID-19. More than 13 crore 53 lakh vaccine shots administered nationwide so far till day 97 of vaccination drive. More than 30 lakh vaccine doses given till 8 p.m. yesterday. 5 states account for 60% of India's total active caseload. More than 1,78,000 recoveries in last 24 hours. In Maharashtra, 12 patients lose their lives as fire breaks out at a COVID center in Virar in Palghar district. Affected patients are being shifted to nearby hospitals. Election Commission bans roadshows and vehicle rallies in West Bengal. Campaigning remains on for two remaining phases in the state. PM to address voters virtually today. Mamata Banerjee also to campaign on virtual mode. 79.09% polling recorded in 6th phase of assembly elections. Prime Minister Modi addresses leaders' summit on climate, says concrete global action required to combat climate change. Announces India-US Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership along with US President Joe Biden. Initiative to mobilize investments, demonstrate clean technologies and enable green collaborations. And in our top story now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will chair high-level meetings today to review the COVID-19 related situation. The Prime Minister has cancelled his visit to West Bengal for today. The high-level meetings will focus on the prevailing COVID-19 situation. PM Modi will review the COVID-19 related situation in an internal meeting today. PM Modi will interact with chief ministers of high-burden states on the COVID-19 situation. He will also hold a meeting with leading oxygen manufacturers in the country via video conferencing. The nation is fighting the COVID fire engulfing the country once again as part of the second wave on multiple fronts, be it the supply of oxygen in different parts of India or supply of life-saving drugs like remdesivir. Shoring up the supply of oxygen ICU beds, multiple measures are being taken by the centre, states and different authorities to ensure lives are saved. Here's a report on the many efforts being undertaken, first to save lives of those afflicted, with the PM driving the effort to ensure oxygen is made available to all those who need it for their survival.
Amid the surging COVID-19 cases and reports of shortage of oxygen and medicines, the Union government is taking proactive steps to help state governments ease up the situation. Prime Minister Narendra Modi chaired a high-level meeting to review the oxygen supply across the country and discuss ways and means to boost its availability. Prime Minister called for a multi-pronged rapid approach to increase production of oxygen, speed of distribution and using innovative ways to provide oxygen support to health facilities. He spoke about the need to fix responsibility with the local administration in cases of obstruction to delivery of oxygen. PM stressed on the need to ensure faster transportation of oxygen to the states and the need to come down heavily on hoarding. Oxygen supplies to states is steadily increasing. Against the present demand from 20 states of 6,785 metric tons per day of liquid medical oxygen, Government of India has from 21st of April allocated 6,822 metric tons per day to these states. Availability of liquid medical oxygen has been increased by about 3,300 metric tons per day, with contributions from private and public steel plants, industries, oxygen manufacturers, as well as through prohibition of supply of oxygen for non-essential industries. Centre is working with states to operationalize the sanctioned PSA oxygen plants as soon as possible. Steps are also being taken to rapidly increase the availability of cryogenic tankers by converting nitrogen and argon tankers, import and airlifting of tankers, as well as manufacturing them. Representatives from the medical community also spoke about the need for judicious use of oxygen and how an audit in some states has decreased oxygen demand without affecting the condition of patients. Railways is being used for rapid and non-stop long-distance transport of tankers. First rake has reached from Mumbai to Vizag to transport 105 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen. Another oxygen express started its journey from Lucknow to Bokaro via Varanasi to fulfill the requirements of medical oxygen in Uttar Pradesh. For the movement of the train, a green corridor was created between Lucknow to Varanasi. Similarly, empty oxygen tankers are also being airlifted to oxygen suppliers to reduce one-way journey time in oxygen supply. The centre has also issued fresh instructions to states regarding uninterrupted supply of medical oxygen. The National Executive Committee constituted under the Disaster Management Act has issued these instructions. There should be no restriction on movement of vehicles carrying medical oxygen between states. States should direct their transport authorities to ensure unhindered movement. Oxygen producers or replenishers should not be bound to service only the state where they're located. They should be free to supply to any state. No time restriction should be imposed on entry of oxygen tankers into municipal or city limits. Seizure of tankers by state authorities is not permitted, nor can they force them to divert supplies. States and union territories will adhere to the distribution plan drawn up from time to time by National Executive Committee. DM, DC, SSP, SP and other such officials will be personally responsible for implementation of these directives. As a result of these efforts, the availability of oxygen has improved in Delhi. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal thanked the central government for increasing the oxygen quota for Delhi. He said that some states had blocked the quota of oxygen supply allocated to Delhi, but due to the efforts of the central government, such obstructions to supply have been addressed.
केंद्र सरकार ने हमारा कोटा कल शाम को बढ़ा के 480 टन कर दिया है केंद्र सरकार ने। इसके लिए हम केंद्र सरकार के बहुत बहुत आभारी हैं। कुछ राज्यों की सरकारों ने जो दिल्ली के कोटे की ऑक्सीजन आनी थी वो भेजनी रोक दी। राज्यों ने कहा कि पहले हम अपने राज्य में इस्तेमाल करेंगे, दिल्ली का कोटा भी हम इस्तेमाल करेंगे, दिल्ली के जो ट्रक हैं वो जाने नहीं देंगे। लेकिन मैं केंद्र सरकार का और दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट का शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहता हूँ। पिछले 2-3 दिन के अंदर उन्होंने हमारी बहुत मदद की है, जिसकी वजह से अब ऑक्सीजन दिल्ली पहुँचने लगी है।
Amid all this, the Supreme Court on Thursday announced that it was taking suo motu cognizance of the COVID-19 situation in the country, including the shortages of oxygen and various other required medication. The court has appointed Harish Salve as amicus curiae in the case and said it wants to see a national plan to tackle COVID-19. Chief Justice of India, S.A. Bobde, said various high courts have been hearing cases on the matter which may lead to confusion. All of these cases may be withdrawn to the Supreme Court, he said. The bench said notice will be issued to the centre today and the matter will be heard on Friday. Meanwhile, the Delhi High Court also directed the centre to ensure oxygen is supplied to the national capital as per the location order and is transported without any hindrance. The High Court said there has to be strict compliance of oxygen allocation order issued by the centre and non-compliance would attract criminal action. Bureau Report, DD India.
And joining us now for more on this story is our correspondent Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, a very good morning to you. Well, the Prime Minister is calling for a multi-pronged approach. Well, he's to battle COVID. He's also talked of innovative ways to ensure uninterrupted supply of oxygen. There are two very important meetings in this regard scheduled for today that the Prime Minister is scheduled to address. He's talking about meetings with CMs. First of all, tell us more what we can expect from the meetings with chief ministers. We just heard Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal speaking just a few seconds back, and it's clear that states cannot fight this surge in cases without the centre's support.
Of course, Rukma, see, there are few states which are high burden like Maharashtra, Kerala, a state like Delhi, which has a population of somewhere around 2 crore, but then we are seeing a huge spike in cases every day, like almost 25,000 plus cases are happening here. 30% of, or 30%, more than 30% is the positivity rate. So these are the major high cases states which needs to be tackled at a very very priority basis. At the same time, the situation is very dynamic because in every other cases states also we are seeing cases rising with each passing day, and the dynamics that we used to we had earlier, like a week ago or 10 days ago, that this state looks like safer and in a more calmer space. That idea is not standing with the increasing cases every day. So while Prime Minister will be trying to understand and comprehend the issues of these high burden cases, at the same time he'll also try to understand a foreseeable future for other states which do not have very high load of cases, but then they have potential to become one of the hotspot of COVID cases, and what are the medical and health infrastructure, drugs and plasma donors. But then there are SOS calls also, and other people also coming forward and helping that SOS call to be met. So there can be a coordinated way where the demand and supply of all the essential commodities in helping the patient fight this corona disease, and the states to strengthen their healthcare infrastructure can be augmented. Recently, like yesterday only, we have had this hospitals from across various states sending SOS calls that the oxygen supply in their hospital is going to end. By evening, we had Jindal, the steel company, the chairman, he has given on his tweet, he has informed that he has available oxygen of almost 500 metric ton, and he can supply 100 metric ton of liquid oxygen every day to whichever state wants to have that. By the evening, we saw that MP Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan and Jindal company both coordinated, and now the situation is that the oxygen supply from Angul plant in Odisha of Jindal will be done to MP and other states also. So there are private companies, private entities, individual also who are trying to come forward and support the crisis-ridden country and the state. And the need of ours is to find all those points of supplies, all those gaps in demand, and to plug in the holes so that a well-coordinated effort can smoothen the supply chain and bring the problem little down across the country.
Right, so all eyes on those two meetings and their outcome today. Thank you very much, Abhishek, for joining us and for your inputs. And now, well, amid reports of hospitals denying cashless facility, the regulator has stepped in now. Insurance regulator IRDAI has asked health insurance companies to ensure that policyholders entitled to cashless treatment are extended the facility by all hospitals that have agreed to provide this. It is clarified by IRDAI that where insurers have an arrangement with the hospitals for providing cashless facility, such network hospitals are obligated to provide cashless treatment for all treatments, including treatment of COVID-19. The IRDAI statement followed reports of some hospitals not granting cashless facility for COVID-19 treatment. Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman had tweeted reports are being received of some hospitals denying cashless insurance. The Finance Minister on Thursday also spoke to Chairman IRDAI SC Khuntia and asked him to act immediately to address complaints of denial of cashless claims by insurance companies. The Finance Minister further stated that in March 2020, COVID was included as a part of comprehensive health insurance, cashless available at networked or even temporary hospitals. She also mentioned that more than 9 lakh COVID-related claims for 8,642 crore rupees have been settled by insurance companies. IRDAI will direct companies to prioritize authorizations and settlements of COVID cases. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has appealed to leaders of corporate India to come forward and supplement government efforts towards fulfilling the rising hospitalization needs in view of a second COVID surge. She said that their prompt and targeted efforts will certainly help to provide much-needed relief to citizens. During this difficult time, the ministry has suggested that the vacant buildings for disposal may be used for makeshift hospitals and provide temporary COVID care facility. Meanwhile, the ministry has allowed spending of corporate social responsibility funds for setting up makeshift hospitals and COVID care facilities, including vaccination for the general public to reduce stress on existing healthcare infrastructure. And the government is working arduously for smooth coordination between states, hospitals and suppliers of oxygen and vaccines to provide relief to patients in the fight against COVID-19. While addressing an event, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that provision of oxygen, vaccines and their logistics to people affected by coronavirus is being ensured. She stated that the Prime Minister himself is monitoring the situation with eminent doctors and vaccine manufacturers. She also said that a slew of announcements have been made with regard to remdesivir, and custom duty has been waived and quantity for export has been held back for use in the country, considering requirement of remdesivir injections. These announcements are expected to increase availability of the injection. For oxygen supply, the government is identifying idle manufacturing capacities to match the demand and supply in the country. Nirmala Sitharaman also said that the way forward to tackle the current situation is through micro-containment zones so that life and livelihood can be protected. And joining us now for more details is our correspondent Tapas Bhattacharya. Tapas, first of all, give us a sense of the overall COVID situation. The government continues to step up efforts, providing makeshift hospitals, temporary hospitals, ensuring that there is smooth supply, uninterrupted supply of oxygen, also appealing to corporate India. But first, the COVID situation overall. How grim is it?
Right. So the overall COVID situation, is nothing to write home about. In fact, India added more than 3.3 lakh cases yesterday, and the second successive time that it had added over 3 lakh cases. So in that sense, the situation is quite grim. In fact, if you take a close look at the fatalities in the last 10 days, it's been over 1,000 or approximately over 1,000 in the last 10 days. And if you take a look at the last 3 days, it is over 2,000. So in that sense, the fatalities has been quite high in this particular, in the country. In fact, if we take a close look at Delhi's COVID situation, it is quite, baffling that it's almost 26,000 the cases. Yesterday turned up more than 26,000 cases were there yesterday, and almost 72,000 tests were done. So that the testing has reduced. In fact, a few days back, the testing were done almost over 90 to 1 lakh. Now, for the last couple of days, it has reduced less than 80,000. So the testing has reduced, and what we can see is that yesterday, Delhi has touched a new record in that in terms of the fatalities. More than 300, approximately.
Well,
because
Tapas,
of the COVID, the peak of 36.24. So what it actually shows is that every third person in Delhi who's getting themselves tested is coming out positive, and that is actually putting a lot of pressure on the machinery, on the healthcare machinery. So much so that as per the Delhi government's own what you call the report, Delhi government's own COVID graph, they have currently only 12 what you call ICU beds in the national capital. That's a current situation. I'm talking about 3 beds with ventilator, and rest are beds with oxygen. So only 12 beds overall is left in the national capital, and it's also having an effect on the NCR at the same time. The paucity of oxygen and the paucity of healthcare workers is a massive cause of concern for Delhi and NCR. Rukma.
Right, Tapas, and when we talk about other measures that the government is taking, for example, well, the Finance Minister, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has appealed to corporates, and it has, the government has said that corporate social responsibility funds can now be used for makeshift hospitals. Clearly, the government leaving no stone unturned. Also, now transport of oxygen, for example, there will be uninterrupted supply between states and through states as they reach out to patients as and how it is required, oxygen supply, I mean. So give us more of a sense of that, how the government is leaving no stone unturned.
Right, Rukma, let's just put this way that the central government has increased the quota of oxygen to different states, especially to Delhi. In fact, Delhi used to have 370 metric tons of oxygen earlier, and now it has got 480 tons. That's the only problem that was happening is about getting the oxygen tanker in the national capital, and the MHA has come out with a series of guidelines to make sure that that doesn't there is an uninterrupted supply of oxygen to its destination. So that is one good thing that happens. There are a couple of more decisions that the central government has taken that will have a massive bearing on the COVID crisis. The first is directing all hospitals to go cashless. So that is a huge thing coming out from the finance ministry and the finance minister herself, that all the hospitals have been directed to go cashless, and that kind of helps the common man who doesn't have to shell out a huge sum of money in the private sector, especially in getting themselves cured. So that is a huge step. The other point that the government has asked is the corporate sector to come out in numbers to help mitigate this particular crisis, where corporate social CSR funds will be used to set up isolation center, COVID care center, and these particular centers will also augment the health infrastructure, which is kind of at the brink of right now, and especially for the national capital, these particular decisions will have a far-reaching effect, considering the fact that most of the Delhi hospital, along with the hospitals in the neighboring NCR, especially in Ghaziabad, in Noida, there is a tendency to build the customer in a manner that they are, that is higher than the rate. Also, they will be, that will help the person who is getting admitted not to pay from his own or her own pocket, and then relies on the health insurance. So that is a huge step by the central government.
Right, many steps, Tapas, at this point. And well, thanks very much for joining us there. Meanwhile, you keep your eyes on those developments and as and how the updates and however they happen. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we are actually running out of time here, so I'll have to end our conversation. Meanwhile, you keep your eyes on that story. Moving on now, the cumulative number of COVID-19 vaccine doses administered in the country has now crossed the 13 crore mark, being 13 crore 54 lakhs, as part of the world's largest vaccination drive. Over 31 lakh vaccination doses were administered in the past 24 hours. All those above 18 years old can register themselves for COVID vaccination on the CoWIN portal and the Arogya Setu app starting the 28th of this month. And news now from poll-bound West Bengal, noting that COVID-19 safety norms were being flouted in the state during campaigning. The Election Commission on Thursday banned roadshows and vehicle rallies with immediate effect and said no public meeting having more than 500 people would be allowed. The order also said the Commission has noted with anguish that many political parties and candidates are still not adhering to prescribed safety norms during public gatherings. As per the Election Commission's order, no roadshow or padyatra will be permissible. No cycle or bike or vehicle rally is permissible. No public meeting beyond the limit of 500 persons at a place subject to availability of adequate space with social distancing. Permissible permission for roadshow, cycle, bike or vehicle in Delhi, if granted already, stands withdrawn. Meanwhile, campaigning for the 7th and 8th phases of assembly elections has gained momentum in West Bengal. In the 7th phase of polling, 36 seats will go to the polls on the 26th of April, and in the 8th and final phase, 35 constituencies will go to polls on April 29th. Counting of votes will take place on May 2nd. Prime Minister will address people of West Bengal virtually. PM Modi will address public rallies via VC, that is video conference, in Malda, Murshidabad, Bardhaman and Kolkata, while TMC chief Mamata Banerjee will also address rallies virtually. And joining us now is our correspondent Prasenjit from Kolkata. Prasenjit, the Election Commission cracking down on flouting of COVID-19 norms. Meanwhile, campaigning continues, but with in the new normal, in a totally different way. Has the Election Commission mentioned any particular parties that have flouted these norms?
Look, Election Commission late in the night yesterday, they have restricted the entire form of campaigning for the 7th and 8th phase of elections. They have said that public rallies, bike rallies, road shows, everything is banned for the 7th and 8th phase election. It is a good development in the night around 10 yesterday. And by that time, Prime Minister, as you know, that he has cancelled his trip to West Bengal today. He was scheduled 4 public rallies today, and but the entire thing will happen virtually. And BJP has planned a massive social media campaigning of this rally of Prime Minister. Prime Minister will be live at about 4:50 or 5 p.m. in the afternoon. And he was supposed to cater 6 assembly constituencies in 4 rallies today. So the BJP will be having screen all these constituencies. People will there maintaining COVID protocol, and one of the major leaders will be leading that 4 places in Malda, Murshidabad, Birbhum and Kolkata. So this is the format BJP has planned earlier. After that election issue a ban. So after election commission issuing the ban, Congress leader Mamata Banerjee all her public rallies, as she was doing 3 public rallies every day. So she has very night that she will also doing virtual rallies. So for the eighth phase of will start virtually, and it is now very important that how the IT teams of Trinamool Congress and BJP, they can perform and they can reach out to the people. On the other hand, left parties already declared that they will not hold any sort of public rallies or road shows or street corner meetings. And Congress is also in very difficult time because their party president and the star campaigner Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary himself is COVID affected, and also their central leader and the member of parliament Rahul Gandhi is also COVID positive. So Congress is absolutely out of the fray in terms of campaigning in this phase. So now it is absolutely between BJP and Trinamool Congress virtually.
Right. Well, we'll have to leave it at that for now. There seems to be a problem with the audio, Prasanjit. Meanwhile, well, you keep your eyes on those rallies, although in a different format, to be held today and in the days to come as campaigning picks up pace in an entirely new form for the 7th phase of polling. Thanks very much for joining us. And well, moving on now, 79.09% voting was recorded in the 6th phase of assembly polls in West Bengal held on Thursday. Polling was conducted peacefully in 14,480 polling stations spread across 43 assembly constituencies. The voters set an example of COVID-appropriate behavior following due protocols of sanitization and social distancing. The Commission expressed gratitude to all stakeholders, especially voters, for their enthusiastic and fearless participation in the election process. It also thanked the young electors, senior citizens, service voters for taking part in elections honoring COVID protocol norms. And it's time now for a short break. We'll be right back. More up ahead here on Breakfast News. Keep watching DD India.
Kitchen waste, green waste, dried leaves from the garden, which are a source of carbon.
The money we received from the government added to our savings all went into the rice mill. I was into athletics before going in for judo, which really attracted me. It is a wonderful sport for girls and very beneficial.
A quick look at the day's top news.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching Breakfast News here on DD India, and meanwhile, news next about how tragedy struck as at least 12 people died in ICU as a fire broke out in the Vijay Vallabh Hospital in Virar in Mumbai in the wee hours today. The incident took place around 3 a.m. Patients were rescued and shifted to nearby hospital for treatment. The fire has been doused by the department. This is not the first time that a fire has broken out in a Maharashtra hospital treating COVID patients. Earlier this month, a fire broke out at a private hospital in Nagpur, while last month a blaze broke out at a COVID hospital in Mumbai. In other news, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Leaders Summit on Climate hosted by US President Joe Biden on Thursday. Prime Minister Modi said climate change is a lived reality for millions around the world. PM Modi also said that concrete action is needed for humanity to combat climate change and that India is doing its part.
Climate change is a lived reality for millions around the world. Their lives and livelihoods are already facing its adverse consequences. Friends, for humanity to combat climate change, concrete action is needed. We need such action at a high speed, on a large scale, and with a global scope. We in India are doing our part. Our ambitious renewable energy target of 450 gigawatts by 2030 shows our commitment.
The Prime Minister also said that as a climate-responsible developing country, India welcomes partners to create templates of sustainable development. He also said he, along with President Biden, is launching the India-US Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership.
Climate-responsible developing country, India welcomes partners to create templates of sustainable development in India. This can also help other developing countries who need affordable access to green finance and clean technology. That is why President Biden and I are launching the India-US Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership. Together, we will help mobilize investments, demonstrate clean technologies, and enable green collaborations.
The Biden administration on Thursday pledged to slash U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 50% to 52% from 2005 levels by 2030. A new target it hopes will spur other big emitter countries to raise their ambition to combat climate change. The goal, unveiled at the start of a two-day climate summit hosted by Democratic President Joe Biden, comes as the United States seeks to reclaim global leadership in the fight against global warming after former President Donald Trump withdrew the country from international efforts to cut emissions.
Maintaining those investments and putting these people to work, the United States sets out on the road to cut greenhouse gases in half by the end of this decade. That's where we're headed as a nation. And that's what we can do if we take action to build an economy that's not only more prosperous, but healthier, fair, and cleaner for the entire planet.
And let's move on now to our next segment, Web News Review, in which we'll be taking a look at all the news that's trending on the World Wide Web. And it's over to my colleague Abhishek Jha for more on, well, what have you picked up, Abhishek, this morning for us as far as news on the web is concerned?
So, Rukma, the first news I'm bringing is from The Statesman, which has made headline of PM Modi cancelling his West Bengal visit. It says that PM Modi cancels West Bengal tour due to high-level meetings to review COVID-19 situation in the capital. Prime Minister Modi had informed about his decision by a tweet, and the news has also mentioned that tweet in which Prime Minister has said that I would not be going to West Bengal. So this was The Statesman. Next is Hindustan Times, which has which is bringing us the news of Puducherry going under complete lockdown. The news says that COVID-19, Puducherry under complete 4-day lockdown from today. The lockdown comes in the backdrop of Puducherry registering 987 new COVID cases on Thursday, taking the overall tally 50,580. So, I mean, the COVID rising number of cases, every state is taking some strict measures. Sad news, though, the Indian Express is bringing us music composer Shravan Rathore dies of COVID-19 complications. Shravan Rathore, one half of the music duo of Nadeem Shravan, was very famous music composer duo in 90s, and many super hit Bollywood films especially were contribution of their music composition that made them successful also. So quite a sad news from Bollywood for Bollywood fans. The next news is the Pioneer, which says that UAE bans travels from India due to worsening COVID situation from Sunday. So from Sunday onwards, the UAE has banned travel from India for 10 days due to worsening COVID-19 situation in the country. The travel ban will come into effect from 11:59 p.m. on Saturday, April 24th, and is subject to review after 10 days. The next news is from the Times of India, which has made news of Moscow's political crisis, where imprisoned Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has said in an emotional message from behind bars that he felt pride and hope after learning from his lawyer about the mass protest demanding his freedom that swept Russia the previous night. So quite a dynamic situation in politics in Russia. This was all from the news wave section. Back to you, Rupima, in studio.
Well, thank you very much, Abhishek, for filling us in on all that's making news on the World Wide Web and for joining us this morning with those inputs. And it's time now to take a look at all the news all the headlines making news from across the world as well. Countries battle surge in COVID cases. Japan joining the list of countries that's tightening restrictions on its citizens. Also, various innovative measures that are being adopted by other countries in order to battle the scourge. Let's take a look at all the news across the globe. First of all, we begin by COVID-19 with COVID-19 updates worldwide. More than 14 crore 53 lakh people across the world have tested positive for COVID-19 so far, while over 12 crore 33 lakh people have recovered from coronavirus. The deadly virus has so far claimed the lives of over 30 lakh 85,000 people from across the globe. The United States continues to be the worst affected by COVID-19 with more than 3 crore 26 lakh positive cases. Over 5,84,000 people have died of the virus in the United States. The Japanese government is expected to declare a state of emergency in Tokyo, Osaka and Kyoto for the third time today, following a resurgence of new COVID-19 infections in the country. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga on Thursday said his government will formally declare the state of emergency after a meeting with experts. Japan has so far registered over 5,46,000 cases of COVID, while the deadly virus has claimed the lives of at least 9,764 people in the country. The U.S. Senate, with overwhelming bipartisan support on Thursday, passed a hate crimes bill to address a drastic rise in violence and discrimination against Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic. The bill passed 94-1 with Missouri Senator Josh Hawley the only no vote. It must pass the House of Representatives now, where Democrats hold a clear majority. U.S. President Joe Biden has called for the passage of the bill. Reports of violence against Asian Americans have risen since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. And let's move on now to news from sports in our segment, Sports Track. Indian women boxers have put up sensational performances as they created history at the 2021 IBA Youth Men's and Women's World Boxing Championships and concluded their campaign on highly successful notes with 7 gold medals in Kielce, Poland on Thursday. All the women finalists in action, Gitika 48 kg, Naurem Bebirojisana Chanu 51 kg, Poonam 57 kg, Vinka 60 kg, Arundhati Chaudhary 69 kg, T. Sanamacha Chanu 75 kg and Alfia Pathan 81 kg registered victories and finished on the top of the podium. Previously, Indian women had won 5 gold medals during the 2017 edition of the Youth World Championships held in Guwahati. The Indian women's team also finished as the #1 team in the ongoing championship ahead of Russia with 7 gold medals. And for our health detail now in our next segment on health. Staying outdoors during the bright sunny days can affect skin in many ways. The sun's ultraviolet rays can cause major damage to the skin. In our next report, we'll be telling you about how to prevent sunburn and damage due to sunlight.
Exposure to sun can cause many skin problems like wrinkles, tanning and age spots. Sunscreens act as a shield against the harmful UV rays that penetrates every time your skin is exposed to the sun.
One should wear a sunscreen on a regular basis even if there is no sunlight during the morning hours, because UV rays, which are the main culprit, they come through, they travel through the clouds and the rain and damage the skin.
When it comes to choosing a right sunscreen, it's easy to get confused with the wide range of sunscreens available in the market.
A sunscreen is said to be efficacious if it is having 2 good marking standards. One of them is SPF or sun protection factor, which anything for Indian skin should be above 15. Carrying or using a higher SPF does not offer proportionate benefits. But the more important marking is a PA standard, and a PA triple+ rating is best suited for a sensitive skin.
However, knowing about the correct way to apply sunscreen is also important.
One should be careful to reapply every 2 hours if somebody is working in a hot and humid weather. But if somebody is indoors in a comfortable climate control, then even 1 application should be sufficient. But the quantity of sunscreen in an appropriate base should be enough to cover the skin structure properly, and all exposed areas should be taken care of. And even despite wearing a sunscreen, it will help the person very much if full sleeves clothing, if they are ultra sensitive, and also take precaution by wearing a cap or covering with a cloth.
Wearing a sunscreen protects you from many skin problems. It is important to include sunscreen in your daily skincare routine. So don't forget to apply a sunscreen before stepping out during the day. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
And time now to take a look at the weather forecast. The satellite picture shows that under the influence of a fresh active western disturbance, fairly widespread to widespread rainfall or snowfall with isolated thunderstorm and gusty winds very likely over western Himalayan region, Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan and Muzaffarabad, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand during 22nd and 24th April, and isolated to scattered rainfall with isolated thunderstorm and gusty winds very likely over adjoining plains of northwest India during the same period. A north-south trough runs from South Madhya Maharashtra to South Tamil Nadu, and a cyclonic circulation lies over South Tamil Nadu and neighborhood in lower tropospheric levels. Under the influence, isolated to scattered rainfall or thunderstorm very likely over South Peninsular India. During next 4 to 5 days, isolated heavy rainfall also likely over South Interior Karnataka on the 23rd and Kerala and Mahe till the 24th of April 2021. No significant heat wave conditions likely over the country in the next 4 to 5 days. And also rain or thunder showers observed at most places over Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh, Gilgit-Baltistan and Muzaffarabad. And sub-Himalayan, West Bengal and Sikkim, at many places of Arunachal Pradesh and Himachal Pradesh, at a few places over Odisha and at isolated places over Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Assam and Meghalaya. Let's take a look now at temperatures recorded across the country. Well, that's all we have for you in this edition of Breakfast News. But as we go, we'd like to remind you once again not to ensure that all COVID protocols are maintained. And here we'll leave you with visuals of visitors enjoying hillsides carpeted in yellow mustard in the Chino Hills State Park just outside Los Angeles. Take a look and enjoy. Meanwhile, wear your mask, maintain social distancing and hand hygiene even as the fight against COVID continues. Namaskar. Have a great day.